Welcome in, everybody, on this beautiful Wednesday. I hope y'all are having a wonderful day. That groove was real nice, man. Got me all down in my Barry White register. That was just nice. That might have just been too cool to open up like that. Man, that just set me right on at ease. I hope you all are having a wonderful day. I hope it's beautiful wherever you are in the world. I see y'all in the chat. Hello, Catfish. Hello, My Hassle. All right. Hello, Kyle. What's up, Kyle? Keep the good ideas coming. I love that, RP. Okay. Pragmatic humanist, always stoked to catch the big homie live and in color. I love it. Man, it just took me back to In Living Color. Y'all don't know nothing about that In Living Color. All right. Hi, everyone. Okay, y'all gonna get me reading all of these already. What's up, Kai? What's going on? Greetings, everybody. Greetings. Thank y'all for being here for this Wednesday conversation. This for me, it's noontime conversation. Hello. And we're going to talk about how do we change people's minds. And this conversation has been fascinating to me ever since last year. And Kyle, if you're still here, you might remember this because it was during a Sunday session. We were doing a Sunday session series called Mind Change, or Change My Mind. And I think like by the time we got into week 2, I was like, man, I think I'm realizing a lot of things about the way people change their minds. It was such an incredible conversation, So I want to kind of pull on some of that today to talk about this because I know just, as things kind of continue to unravel the way that they do, we're always wondering like, man, how do we get people to change their minds? And the other end of that question is not just how do we get them to change their minds. I think the thing we're really asking is how do we get them on our side, right? Which of course in many cases just becomes a false binary because like there's never just two sides. There's so many sides, and then at the end of the day, everybody keeps fighting over who's on whose side. Okay, now that's a weird conversation, but no, this is how it kind of ends up happening. So this has always been fascinating to me. How do people change their minds? How do we change people's minds? How do we get people on our side? When I was a Christian, the language was, how do you win souls? And so, but then when I got into the corporate world and in the sales world, is how do you win people? Yeah, I love that. It's them camps, yeah. How do you win people? And so I just want to go ahead and get down to the nitty gritty. Is how do we change people's mind? Now, the goal is not to win arguments, dominate debates, embarrass believers, or force ideological conversion. The goal is to cultivate the conditions where people can safely reconsider what they believe, why they believe it, and whether those beliefs still serve reality, well-being, and human flourishing. Now, that's how I ground my approach to this question, or my framework for this question. This is why you've likely heard me say before, I don't really exist to change people's minds. That's not something I'm invested in. I'm not invested in changing people's minds. I'm invested in cultivating space that makes it safe for people to change their minds. There's a difference and there's a reason, right? So, and that's why I say, so for me, when I think of minds changing and changing minds, for me, my focus is not on winning arguments, dominating debates, embarrassing people, or forcing ideological conversion. For me, the goal becomes to cultivate the conditions where people can safely reconsider what they believe, why they believe it, and whether those beliefs still serve reality, well-being, and human flourishing. And I need all three of them to work together. I need that triad. I need that trifecta, that trinity, if you will, triunity, if you're weird. I don't care what you call it. I need it. So many of us think that changing minds is a battle. And so it's just like you bring the facts, you win the argument, right? If you find the contradiction, then you get to claim the victory. And somehow, after a person is being embarrassed, overwhelmed, corrected, or defeated, the other person is supposed to say, you know what? Thank you for publicly dismantling my worldview. I feel so much freer now. But that's not usually how people change, right? People do not normally change their minds because someone overpowered them. They change their minds when they become safe enough to tell the truth to themselves. And we're gonna spend some time talking about safety today, because this is where, to me, this is where mind change happens at. This is where mind change happens at. Cultivation, like plants, can be specific and require observation for what works. Yes, and if or other plants, with other plants, so to speak. Yes, man. Oh, this is going to be good. So today, I want to challenge the whole phrase changing people's minds, because I don't think we do change people's minds. I think people change their own minds. And our responsibility is to cultivate the kind of space where that becomes possible. And so I'm going to very quickly just kind of hit the neuroscience of mind change. Now you say, why would you hit the neuroscience of mind change quickly? Because I am not a neuroscientist. So none of this is based off of my research, my observation. This is me reading and saying, oh, okay, yeah, this sounds about right. So this is my understanding. So I'm going to give you the highlights of the neuroscience, and then we're going to do a little deep dive. All right. So the neuroscience of changing minds, understanding how we change our mind requires a deep dive into the human brain, which is a complex organ always in flux. Neuroscience has revealed that several factors are key in the process of changing one's beliefs. Okay. The first one, which is one that I'm absolutely fascinated by, is neuroplasticity. And I'm sure most of you, if you've heard the word by now, neural plasticity. I'm sure most of you have heard the word by now. But if you haven't, please feel free to, well, I mean, you don't need my permission, but still, please feel free to Google it and learn a little bit about plasticity, neural plasticity. So it's the brain's ability to change and adapt as a result of experience. Now, this can happen in two ways: at the synaptic level, where the connections between neurons become stronger or weaker, and through changes in the number of connections. Now, when we are exposed to new information or experiences, our brain literally rewires itself to accommodate this new data, which can lead to a change in beliefs. That's how neuroplasticity works. But then there's also emotional influence. Now, emotions play a significant role in shaping our beliefs. Neuroscientific studies suggest that emotional reactions to information can profoundly impact whether and how we change our minds. For example, if new information about a political issue is framed in a way that resonates emotionally, whether positively or negatively, it's more likely to alter our existing beliefs. So if you give me some information, political, religious, cultural. It can be about a new rapper. It could be about the new three Drake albums that just dropped. I think it was three of them. You give anybody some information, but you find a way to frame it where it resonates with them emotionally. It pulls on them, whether it's positive or negative, whether it's anger or joy, whether it's hate or love. If it pulls on that emotion, it is more likely to alter existing beliefs. Now, then there's also cognitive dissonance. Now, the psychological concept refers to the mental discomfort experienced when holding two or more contradictory beliefs, ideas, or values at the same time. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about how that works a little bit later on. So, hang around for that. So, neuroscience shows that this discomfort is not just an abstract feeling, but a tangible process in the brain that can lead us to change our attitudes in order to reduce the dissonance. Sometimes the dissonance just gets too great. The dissonance just gets too great. And then there's the role of the prefrontal cortex, the PFC. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for higher cognitive functionings such as decision making, plays a crucial role in belief change. It is involved in critically evaluating new information, overseeing emotional reactions, and making the ultimate decision to change a belief or stick to the old one. Okay. And then the last one, and this is where we're going to kind of hit the road at. The last one, number 5, and you'll see why this is probably going to be my launching pad where I'm like, okay, yeah, this is why I got so much to say. The last one is social influence. Okay. It's social influence. All right. Our brains are incredibly sensitive to the beliefs and behaviors of others. Neuroscientific research indicates that social context and the opinions of people around us can influence neural processing, making us more likely to adapt prevailing opinions, especially if they are upheld by individuals or groups we trust or admire. So I think last week I had Boise on with me for a live, and one of the things that we share in common as Black atheists is one of our goals was to normalize atheism. Specifically within the context of the Black community. Why? Because if there are people in the Black community that are trusted and admired and just so happen to be atheists, it makes it more receptive to the larger community, to the broader community. So a major part of mind change is social tolerance. Okay. A major part of mind change is social tolerance. The more tolerant an idea, concept, or practice is socially, the more likely people are to entertain the idea, concept, or practice. I'm going to say that again. I'm going to say that again. The more tolerant an idea, concept, or practice is socially, the more likely people are to entertain the idea, the concept, or the practice. And an example that I always use, it's a harsh example, it's a crass example, but I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it because it's true. It's a truism. Is booty eating. Booty eating is a prime example of the more tolerant an idea, concept, or practice is socially, the more likely people are to entertain the idea, concept, or practice. When I grew up, if you got called a booty eater, those were fighting words like that. There was never a positive connotation to being called a booty eater or being accused of eating booty. But somewhere in the past, like, I don't know, 15, 20 years, it may be longer. I missed it when it became a thing. I did not get the memo, but all of a sudden it just started showing up in music. It started showing up in television shows. It started popping up all over the world. It started being in conversations on radio and being in conversations on TV. And then now it is something that is quite normalized. It's just like, yeah, there are people who eat booty. So what? See, that the more tolerant an idea, concept, or practice is socially, the more likely people are to entertain the idea, concept, or practice. And social tolerance seems to be cultivated by social visibility, right? And so again, this going back to why I even started kind of making content in the first place, it was just about being visible as a Black atheist, being visible and being vocal as a Black atheist. And then I said, you know what, I might as well be visionary since I'm here. So just be visible, be vocal, and be visionary as a Black atheist, because if I expect the tolerance level of atheism to increase within the context of Black communities, then I also need to get the visibility of Black faces and Black voices up in the Black community, because social tolerance seems to be cultivated by social visibility, which means, and this is why, like, we do the work that we do with Bridge City, is because we recognize that we need to be purposefully visible as growing communities that are solving problems and enjoying life. And we're going to talk about why we're going to talk about why that's so important, why we need to be seen, because we're talking about how people change their minds. Trust me, this is why we need to be seen as solving problems and enjoying life. All right, so let me tell you how I kind of envision, how I visualize mind change. And I was actually working on, like, I got to get my time back, man. Because I was actually trying to build out a model, and I had started building out the model and had completely forgot about it until I went back to look at these notes from almost 2 years ago. And it was like, oh yeah, I did start building that model. And so now I got to dig through all my stuff and find it. But this is how I kind of visualize um, mind change working. I think that we change beliefs the same way that we form beliefs. Okay, and that's really because what we're talking about when we're talking about how do people change their minds or how do we change people's minds, you're talking about how to change their beliefs or how to get them to form new beliefs, right? And so I think we change beliefs, and it's just me. You ain't got to think what I think, but I think that we change beliefs the same way that we form beliefs. So I think we form beliefs because input comes in. That input comes in, and then we think about it. That's thought. And then if we think about it a lot, it becomes velocity and it's moving around. And so when it's moving around, it has, if there's enough other thoughts in there that connect with that thought, with that same thought, then they find relevance. And then because they find relevance and they're a little bit bigger so they can connect with more thoughts, they're probably occupying more brain, more space in your brain. So you're thinking about them more, giving them more velocity. So they're moving fast and they're finding more relevance with other data points as you're thinking about it and adding new input put in there. And then that becomes mass formation. Okay. Now that's just the way I visualize it. I might be overdoing it and underdoing it or just way outside the river, but so far it's working. It's working, right? And so, oh man. Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Are there okay? We can let those comments in, Jude. I did that. I started that. I was talking about booty eating, and about how it used to not be popular, and it was actually derogatory to be accused of being a booty eater. But somewhere it became socially tolerant as it became more socially visible. So as people begin to talk about booty eating in songs, I think T-Pain talked about it in one of his songs, and people started, putting it in like in the TV shows. I think people were bleaching their booty holes for this reason as well. I don't know how the bleach works, but y'all know I'm an old man now. Y'all found out I'm 40. I'm old. I'm old. But we were talking about how visibility often impacts tolerance. It's all about mind change. It's all about mind change. And so so I visualize belief formation happening through input, thought, velocity, relevance, and then that becomes mass formation. All right, and I'm gonna kind of break it down a little bit and help you see what I'm trying to think. Right, so let's start with input. So input is just information, it's sensory input. So when I say information, and I think, man, I think this is a I might geek out a little bit here. I might nerd out a little bit here, and just forgive me if I do. But I think we absolutely underestimate how much information we're overloaded with. Because so often when we think of information, we only think about information as the stuff that we are actively consuming. So when we think of information, and I used to do this little conversation with people about their nutrition, but it was about their information diet, right? Like what is that like? Because that impacts so much of your emotions. It impacts so much of how you respond, how you view the world. So but I think we underestimate just how much information that we are inundated by. Because information is not just the books you read or television shows you watch or the music you hear on purpose. It's also all of those things that you just hear passing by. But it's also it's it's we're going to break it down this way. It's the reception of various data points, and I want to explain what I mean by various. The human brain can process 11 million bits or points of information every second. Just pause and think about that for a minute. The human brain can process 11 million bits or points of information every second. But our conscious minds can only handle 40 to 50 bits of information a second. That's a huge, like it's a huge chasm. It's a gap, I'd say. It's quite a distance. It is, right? It's quite a difference. That's what that is. All right. So when you step outside in the morning, just within that first second, you're being hit with 11 million points of information. And you're like, how? Well, like just sight alone, there's sunlight, there's grass, there's trees, there's cars passing by, there's neighbors, there's all the variants of colors in the sky, there's all the variants of colors that the sun is causing, there's all the variants of colors of the various cars and the various trees and the various grasses. But even smell, there's the fresh air, there's the smell of cut grass, of neighbors grilling, there's the smell of rain coming, there's the sound of leaves rustling, traffic in the distance, dogs barking, birds signaling. There are 11 million bits of information that are like slamming you packed, and you're only getting about 40 to 50 of it, per second. But all of that is information. All of that is data. All of that is stuff that our brain is processing. And of course, we're working off of the 40 to the 50 at a given moment, right? But all of that is what our entire lived experience, is in that processing. And that's the foundation of everything that we think and feel and identify with. It's what, we are ultimately like. I love using the word generators when talking about humans. Is that like we're walking generators, like, input comes in and it gets processed in the uniqueness of who we are, and then that becomes our lived experience. That becomes the way that we identify with reality. All right, so we have all of this input coming in. All of that input, some of that input becomes stuff that we think about. So somewhere, not necessarily in the 11 millions, but somewhere in that 40 to 50 bit per second that we're getting, something in that becomes worthy of thinking about to us. It grasps our attention somehow. Somewhere along the road becomes worthy of thinking about, you know? And when you think about that data point, it just helps it move, gives it some move. And so thinking moves the data point. I'm just helping you see how I visualize mind change. All right. And so you think about it. And then the more you think about it, the faster that data point moves, which increases its likelihood of finding other data points within that brain of yours that it can connect to. And I call that relevance. It finds other relevant data points that it connects to. Right. And then it begins to, now it's something you think about more because it's occupying more space, in your brain. You're thinking about it more, and it's connecting with more thoughts like it. And you're likely feeding yourself more data points that have high resonance or relevance with those areas that you already kind of been thinking about a lot. All right. So now you're in bias mode a little bit. I mean, it happens. It happens. This is how we do. All right. But so now you've increased the velocity, you've increased the relevance, and now it takes hold. All right. And I call that mass and gravity, where data formations increase in mass with the absorption of points and clusters, increasing its ability to find similarity with other points and clusters. Now, to me, that's how ideas form in our mind, or at least that's how I visualize it. I find it very helpful sometimes to help people who feel like they're not good at school, to give them that type of visualization. Because it's not school that you're struggling with, it's the information that you're struggling with. And in most cases, what you don't realize is your real struggle is an assumption. And the assumption is that I should know something that I haven't given myself enough information on, right? I haven't had enough information on this to where this information connects with anything else up in here. So I'm just at the beginning of the process. I'm struggling because that's how it looks in the beginning, But so anyway, so that's how I envision or visualize mind change kind of happening. Okay. Yeah, an internal calibrator. And so now there are measurable contributions to that mind change situation, right? because as information is coming in, it's wrestling with each other. So we have two things that can happen. One of the things, which I think you're going to like this, is time decay. Okay. So the point of time between engagement of points or clusters and last engagement, that's time decay. The longer the time of disengagement, the greater the decay of the bond, leading to a belief and or a behavior change. All right. Now, when I was a believer, I could recognize this uh with saying my bedtime prayers and saying grace over my food, right? Uh there was a time decay to at one point, this was very important to me. At one point, early on in my belief system, it was very important to say my prayers before I go to bed and to say grace over my food, to bless my food. It was very important. And watch this. It's the this was introduced to me because I kind of represent this as a transition from folk religion to practical theology. It was introduced to me as almost a cultural or even a citizen, yeah, like a civil, a good citizenship thing to do. Good citizens pray before they go to bed and they bless their food. This is the American thing to do, but or just a cultural thing. Black folk thank the Lord now before they go to bed. If you want to wake up in the morning, you better thank him at night. And but in the early days, you get sat down. We said, "Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. And if I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take." I don't know how that doesn't sound like a horror script to anybody else. Like this sounds like the perfect setup for like a horror movie. If you just got a little white girl with blonde hair that's a little pasty just standing out in the woods somewhere with a little doll hanging by her head and she just look at you like this. Now I lay me down to sleep. Like that's like, no, that's gonna be an incredible horror movie. But anyway, so you get kind of inculcated with that. That's the input, that's the you're thinking about it, that's the velocity, that's the resonance. You're in a culture that you see other people doing it on television, right? So you're getting more input that people got whole songs about, pray, DMX did a whole album about saying his bedtime prayers, so it really takes hold from a folk religion type of perspective. And so, yeah, when I actually got saved and became a believer for real, then I was like, I definitely got to say my prayers and I definitely got to bless my food because now I really believe this, right? But after a while, as I was transitioning more into Satanism, as I transitioned more into practical theology, is what I call, where I was allowing myself to kind of develop an understanding of Scripture beyond the authority of just of tradition itself, trying to explore why we did what we did. I could find less time I found less information outside of the traditional construct, less information about anywhere in the Bible about, hey, make sure you say your prayers before you go to bed. Nor did I find anything that was like, hey, I just found like I couldn't really find anything about just making sure you bless your food. It just so the less I thought about it, the less I thought about it, that's the time decay. The less I engaged with the data points around that idea, the less I engaged with the information around that behavior, the less I engage with the information around that belief, eventually I stopped doing it. And I can remember one time, and this is why I was still a believer. While I was still a believer, I can remember one time I was sat down to eat my food and I had put my hands together to pray. And then I looked around like, ain't nobody here. And I started eating. That was an example of time decay. The more time that has passed from actually engaging that, just somewhere subtly. And some of you probably experienced that with all types of things, that there are beliefs that you forgot you had, you know. And then maybe one day somebody says, "Hey, do you still like such and such?" It's like, "Oh no, I don't even remember that I ever liked that at all." That's time decay, you know. it wasn't even a decision that you necessarily made to say, "I no longer believe this." I've just been so disassociated from that area of information in my thinking that it no longer holds any type of place of priority in my mind anymore, and that's so important. That's so important. Sometimes the best way to make things safer for people to change their minds is we have to create room to get away from those things that keep feeding the bad ideas. Okay, the bad ideas. This is I have a script that I've been working on, and I've just been a little gun shy about whether or not I want to do it. But it's basically about, does debate culture do more harm than good? And it's specifically in the context of atheists versus believers, specifically in that context. And what I wanted to use as a great point of as a great kind of case study was when Bill Nye agreed to debate Ken Ham. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. Now I grew up on Bill Nye. I never knew who Ken was before prior to that moment. But by that moment, I was already a believer and I was fully active. Now, again, I want you to watch something. I was a believer. I knew who Bill Nye was. I had no clue who Ken Ham was, which y'all know. If you've watched some of my videos about this kind of conversation before, then like one of the things I try to throw out there is that, like, hey, these apologists many of these apologists only have an audience because of atheists, because they're not getting platformed, debating university professors. They're not being platformed, debating scientists, except for in the case of when Bill Nye debated Ken Ham, right? Whatever his name is. I don't know the man's name. I did not know him before that. But I do know that as a believer watching that, who grew up on Bill Nye, respected Bill Nye, loved Bill Nye, I had to watch Bill Nye go against the word of God. And as a believer, I was like, Bill Nye is wrong, bro. He's going against the word of God. And kudos, Mr. Ham, for standing up for the word, even though I don't even believe what Ham was saying. Like, even then, like, I was like, yeah, I think some of what Ham is saying is a stretch, but Ham is defending the word of God. Why would Bill Nye be attacking the word of God? That's where I was as a believer. You know, you know. That's right. Ken Ham isn't taken too seriously within Christian circles. Like, no, like, many of the apologists don't actually exist within functional Christianity. And so now what happened is, because Bill Nye did this, and actually I've gone back to rewatch the debate. My family and I, when we took a trip to Orlando years ago, we all listened to the debate on the road trip. And Bill Nye did a fantastic job. But many people in the scientific community feared that it would do what it ended up doing. And that was, in a very real sense, legitimizing Ken Ham, because now he's been on the stage with a real scientist. So it was just like, now he gets this extra boost in his step. And according to Ken Ham, like, and I got to go back to my notes to verify this. I'm just free talking right now. But according to Ken Ham publicly, came out after that and was very grateful for Bill Nye, because he said he was floundering in his success before that moment. You know. hmm I think this is what allowed, if I got the right guy, I think this is what funded the Ark Encounter. His success from being platformed funded the Ark Encounter. And I can go deeper there. But so now, to me, yeah, that was a valid concern. And honestly, I think Bill Nye had 100% good intentions. And the thing is, you don't know things until you know things. We have to avoid the slippery slope type of thinking, right? But you don't know it. And Bill, he really wanted to go on the record for like, nah, we need to let science lay down the gauntlet. And the thing that I always tell people, I'm like, but that's kind of the problem. Science has already done that, and we're treating it like it hasn't. Like, and to me, like that's the thing that I've kind of called out. Like, if we wouldn't seriously debate somebody who believed that Tony Stark did die for our sins, then I don't think we should be debating anybody else who believes anything like that. You know? And if we're going to be debating someone who thinks they have a better view of how the universe came into existence and how we came into existence, I think it should be people who actually have credentials, lab experience, and peer-reviewed research, not just people who believe in ghosts. Now that's just me. But the bigger issue there for me, like, or not the bigger issue, or the more potent issue for what we're talking about today, is the time decay factor. Because by far and large, many people are not thinking about this shit, y'all. I'm sorry. They're not. By far and large, many people are not thinking about, well, God really did make us out of mud, y'all. That's so cool. No, most people are not thinking about that. Many people aren't really thinking about, it's just so awesome how we evolved as a species. There's some people, but most people are not thinking about these things. And so if the conversation of biblical supremacy keeps being platform, then it kind of allows us to never get that time decay effect. Now just let it fade away from their brains. All right, so that's enough about time decay. The next one is cognitive repulsion. Okay, cognitive repulsion. When data is integrated into a cluster, and that's a node, tree, or a network. That's me nerding out a little bit. Sorry. That contrasts with other previously connected data points or clusters, it creates cognitive repulsion. Now, this is to just kind of make sense of what I think that is for me, that's what happened with the concepts of God and love, right? Like, from the time I got saved and started serving my Lord and Savior, habaneros. So from the time that I got saved and started serving in ministry, uh, God and love existed in the same informational data network. They existed there. God is love. Love is God. Loving, godly. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was that type of thing. Those two words existed in the same informational network. But as I begin to grow, there began to be that dissonance between God and love. Mhm. Because at some point I started giving myself information about love that's not based on scripture. And so now it gives me what I'd say is a wider view of love that now contrasts with God as loving in a way that can't be reconciled, you know, especially for an eternal creature. It's like, oh no, this is problematic. This isn't loving at all. And so eventually it creates cognitive repulsion. Same thing with God and truth. In the beginning, for me, God is true, true is God, you know. But at one point, I got to the point where I was like, um, God is truth. Only the true things are things that will lead to God, type of thing. But then the more I committed to truth, the more it became, well, like, whoa, well, when you're looking at God, there's just so many untrue things there. And then if you say, well, yes, that's because the word is imperfect and all of that stuff. And, because it comes down through man's hands, and so, and it's like, well, why would an eternal God then, like a God who's here all the time, why would he just need a book to be written one time if he here all the time? I'm here all weekend. I'm telling you, no, no, no. And so eventually it creates that, God and truth cannot be reconciled. And or God, at least, and just to be very clear here, to be very specific, this Christocentric view of God that I have, this Western Christocentric view, this Western Christocentric baptized in blackness view of God that I have is not is not reconcilable. Like, it doesn't work with my increasing understanding of love and my increasing understanding of truth. And so now eventually that dissonance becomes so great that it creates that cognitive repulsion where I have to reject one of the other. One of them is getting kicked out. And for me, it was God. I'd hold on to the truth. I'd hold on to love and just have to recognize that God was the inconsistent variable, that God was the problematic one there for me. Okay, that's just my story, and I'm sticking to it. I'm sticking to it. So, all right. So I'm kind of sharing all this stuff to highlight that a changed mind is not conquered territory. A changed mind is reorganized trust. This is what I love about hermeneutics. Hermeneutics is about finding a way to interpret something in a way that other people can get value from it. Okay. A changed mind is not conquered territory. It is reorganized trust. So as long as we're approaching things like, I got to change these people's mind, you're trying to conquer territory. And that's not how the mind works. It is not territory to be conquered. If it was, we would have by now. Like, we haven't even cracked the code on the mind yet. We know a lot, but not enough. you know? So when a changed mind is reorganized trust, you know, it is reorganized trust. People change when something shifts in the relationship between information, emotion, identity, confidence, community, and safety. Ideas and beliefs are not isolated statements. They're these clusters and these trees and these networks of meaning that we've been building our whole lives, that we've been generating and calibrating and oscillating between our, throughout our whole lives. The more mass a belief or ideological network holds, the more gravity it has, and it attracts related ideas, and it resists contradiction, and it organizes identity. So when someone says, I believe in God, they may not be making a claim about the universe. That's ain't everybody. hmm This ain't, yeah. There are some people, when they say, I believe in God, and you say, so you believe God just created everything in the beginning. But for some people, yeah, I absolutely do. For other people, it's like, no, I didn't say all that. That's like the inverse of when you tell somebody, I don't believe in God. And somebody says to you, so you just believe everything just came from nothing. Whoa. Those two things are not the same. So there are some times when people say, I believe in God, and what they're really saying is, oh, this is how I understand my childhood. No, this is how I honor my family. This is what I use to explain pain. This is how I avoid nihilism. See, oh, I don't use it. Yeah. Some people, they don't use it to ask, to answer the question. You know what I'm saying? Like, for everybody, God is not an answer to the questions. For some people, God is the avoidance. It's the ability to avoid. It's the right to avoid the question. Our ways are not his ways. Come on now. Yeah. So for some people, when they say, I believe in God, they don't mean it in an apologetic sense. They don't mean it in a truth claim. They mean it in an experiential claim. They mean it in a lived experience. That's a whole, and see, that's the group that we're failing to reach. You're not going to reach them with the truth claims. It's like, you know how like Ray Comfort and what's the other guy, Kirk Cameron, they used to go on the streets and they'd be like, um, if you died today, you know, blah blah blah, and if you ever stole a pencil, then you're damn. What does that make you? A thief? See, I couldn't even make it. I couldn't even make it to the word because like my mind doesn't even work like that anymore. But it's like no, if you've ever stole one pencil, if you've ever accidentally taken a pencil, a pen from the bank, you're you're a thief worthy of God's judgment and hellfire. And you know, they'd walk up to people on the streets, and according to them, people would really get saved. You know, people would be like, "Oh my goodness, I gotta repent," you know, type of thing. But I will say there's something about the questions that already determines what type of response you're gonna get. And I'm just gonna highlight this. This is a little rabbit trail, and I'll get back here maybe. But it the moment you're asking the questions, you're already speaking a Christocentric language. And so based on the response of the people you're talking to, you already know if they're Christian or not. They may not be actively living like Christian, but you're not out here convincing atheists. You're not out here convincing Hindus. You're not out here converting other religions that I can't name right now. Sikhs, I had one. Bam. Jains, I had another one. Rastafarians, well, they're still Christocentric, so that don't count. You know, but no, you're actually finding people who already speak your same language, which means they're already enculturated and inculcated to your same type of indoctrination. You know, all right. So that was that. But the whole point is they'd go to certain people and they'd tell them this, and according to them, many people would get saved. But as a person who looks at things a little differently, I'm always wondering like how many people does that not work with? Because like I've been out in these streets for real. I've done stuff like that. And I'm not trying to suggest that higher percentage or lower percentage or anything like that. What I am trying to get people mindful of is that everything doesn't work for everybody. And so, even as a believer, if you would have caught me in one of my backsliding moments and tried to come towards me with that type of approach, it would not have ended well for you. I would not have been one of the ones you would have used in the footage. Y'all I'm like, cut. This ain't going with you. Nah, and as a believer, it would not have worked for me, right? And it's because like my relationship with that information network was not based on that legalistic approach. Like to me, that just, I don't trust me, there are plenty of things that make the God of the Bible looks like a jerk. Ray Comfort, isn't adding too much to that. But it's like that approach definitely made God look like a jerk. It's just like, dang, like God is really worse at contextual judgment than humans are. So you mean to tell me if somebody accidentally steals a pen from a bank, God is like, nah, bruh, he gotta go off with his head, son. And it's like, dang, that's kind of a jackass. Like, So I would not have responded to that. And I know several other people who would not have responded to that. But in the same token, I do know people who would have. But the problem is with the people who would have, they'd also respond to the tarot card readers that way as well. And so those people end up just floating through life, going to a whole bunch of different phases called, they're just eating the same cereal in different boxes. You know what I'm saying? It's like moving from Frosted Flakes to Flaky Whiteys. I don't know what the other ones are called. I don't know. Sugar Flakes, maybe that's what they're called. Sugar. I can't remember. I used to get them. I don't know what they're called. I don't okay. I don't know. I should have chose a different cereal. I should have. But anyway, okay. So, um, the other thing, and this is where I want to introduce two things that don't get talked about when we talk about people changing their mind. And the first one is the confidence spectrum. The second one is going to be the safety spectrum. So just know that's where we're ending up at. Frosted Flakes, yeah. Um, the first one is the confidence spectrum. Okay, so my hypothesis, and it's just mine. Like it's just mine. Like it ain't got to be yours, right? It ain't got to be yours. It's just mine. My hypothesis is that levels of actual confidence, right? And this is I think I can versus measurable capacity. All right. Levels of actual confidence also impacts both the rate and the probability of mind change. And for me, this is measured by a relationship with available data points as opposed to testimony. So again, like measurable capacity versus um, testimony versus I think I can. You know, I think I can do that. No, do you have you wrestled with enough information to be able to to exude confidence in this? You know, but like, and while this concept is still kind of experimental, I think it can be interrogated in conversation. And so, like, I break it down or I kind of frame it in four categories: understanding, knowing, guessing, and trying. And trying being the level of just no confidence. You know, the person is emotionally attached, but informationally unstable, right? And I think we all kind of know people like that. And I don't want to just say, let me rephrase it. I don't want to say we know people like that. What instead I like to say, I think we all know areas in our own lives where we are like that. Okay. Where we are emotionally attached but informationally unstable. Ooh, I think a great area, and this might hit this might hurt a little bit. Okay, I think a great area of this. Damn, I'm thinking of a lot of them right now. But one is politics. I think politics often is an area where many of us can be emotionally attached but informationally unstable, which basically means I don't have enough data points that have connected with each other to create any type of massive understanding of these things in my worldview yet. But I am emotionally attached for good reason. So I'm not saying this is a bad thing. We're talking about this on spectrum of confidence. So we can be emotionally attached to something, but be informationally unstable. We also do this. Let me do one that doesn't hurt as bad. Okay. We also do this with reality television shows and stars. We're emotionally attached. You know, why they doing this? I can't believe they doing this. Oh, I love this for them. You know, all of that emotionally attached, but informationally unstable. The only information you have is the information you see. And that's actually not enough information to form like a good understanding of who they are. It's emotional attachment but informational instability. I like that. And so in those areas, in the areas where we're emotionally attached but informationally unstable, we may change positions quickly, often just depending on the loudest group, trend, or where we place authority, you know? And ah, yeah, where we place authority. Because everybody doesn't place authority in the same place. You know? Dang, I really wanna make that a question. I'm gonna have to make that a whole thing, like, where do you place authority, you know? So in areas that we have the least amount of or just no confidence in, but we have some attachment to, we are vulnerable to the loudest groups. We're vulnerable to the most comfortable trends, and we're vulnerable to just trust the people or the institutions or the culture that we have assigned authority. Where we've said, okay, like, nah, if they doing it, it gotta be okay. If they're saying it, they know what they're talking about, type of thing. And that's what I'm trying to give you enough nuance in this so that we realize that these are areas that we all struggle with. Sometimes I think when we deconstruct, we think we've just won the one ring that rules them all. And it's like, nah, player, you still got a whole lot of more hills to climb. Like, cause life, them hills gonna keep on coming. It's like hills all the way from here. That's what it is. That sounds like a lovely book title. Hills all the way from here. And I feel like that can mean so many things. It can be like a hills have eyes type of thing, you know, but it could also be. I couldn't think of any other thing with hill in it for like it's all horror movies there. House on Haunted Hill, like it's dang it. I was, hills. I can't even remember what it was now. I'll watch the replay. Okay, so that's the no confidence area. But then there's the area on the spectrum of shallow confidence. And so the person has a belief that feels right, but has not been deeply, it kicked all the way in. A person has a belief that feels right, but they have not deeply tested it. And again, these are things that we all like. I'm not trying to say negative, bad. I'm trying to hopefully see if we can all see ourselves in the mirror. It's time to make a change. I don't learn the words to songs. I'm gonna feel real good. Gonna make a difference. I'm gonna. Okay, so the point is, like, I'm hoping that we can all kind of see ourselves in the mirror here. You know, uh, when we're kind of no, we all have areas that we have shallow confidence. And how do you know that? Because don't none of us have like omni confidence. Like, go ahead and sit your play fake breaking omni confident self down. No one that I know of, and absolute to dangerous. I get it, but I'm pretty damn confident here that no one is omni confident. Like anybody, like, and I guess that's a part of my deconversion, and I might have a bias, you know what I'm saying? Like, but like that was I believed that it was possible for people to be omni confident. Like, no, I believe that as a believer, that like, yeah, you can get to a place in your faith where you have an unction from the Holy One and you know all things. I believed that. And then like the freedom for me was like, no, ain't nobody omni confident. You can only be confident in the areas that you've done the work or built the nodes to have confidence in. So it's not a shame thing. Somebody come up to you, explain to me how the universe got here. Whoa. I've not built any node networks up there because that's not the type of books I read, player. Go ask somebody who's actually interested in that conversation. You don't have to feel bad about not having answers to questions that you didn't ask. You know, I hope this is good. So there are areas that we all have shallow confidence in. So things that feel right, but we've not deeply tested it. And I think many of the things we attach ourselves to are kind of in that area. It feels right. It's intuitive. I think that's about right. We're just not deeply tested. And so like if you're in a conversation with somebody and you realize they have shallow confidence, like the best goal there is to help them connect the dots, you know? And then there's knowing, and that's emerging confidence. And this is actually where people get the most defensive. To me, is what I say. This is actually where people get the most defensive. They know enough to feel certain, but not enough to feel humble. Okay, let me say that again. They know enough to feel certain, but not enough to feel humble. And it's like they've put a lot of thought into this, right? But it's just like life is like a game you've never played before. Okay, here we go. Oh shit, I'm sorry. Life is like a game that you've never played before. Okay. And so I think sometimes the way we approach life is you think you've played it enough to know how this game works. Like back in the day, like you could play Mario enough to eventually like just kind of play it from muscle memory. Life ain't like that. Life is like a game you've never played before, and the levels do not repeat. I don't care how long you pretend like you still 35. The levels do not repeat. They do not. It's like that's right. No answer is final. Like, yes. Like, no. Like you don't like, okay, you think by 30, I got this thing down pat. No. Life just keeps coming. It's like the script just keeps generating, bruh. Like it's there are no really repeats. There are no repeats. So things look familiar sometimes, but like you thought the hole was right here and you jumped too soon and bam, they moved the hole on you because life is like a game you've never played before. And so it's a huge mistake. And we all do it. I don't want to say we all do it, but many of us do it. It is a huge mistake, but we do it. And that is to get a little confidence about something. And this is emerging confidence. Like I know enough about this to feel big. I know enough about this. And number one, you have to know how easy that is. You have to know how easy it is to know enough of something to feel big and still nowhere nearly enough to be qualified to know what the hell you're talking about. Because that's how big the gap is between qualified people talking about it and just people talking about it. It's a huge ass gap. I think the more we begin to interrogate the world around us, the more we begin to realize that we're not heading towards idiocracy. No, y'all are getting this all wrong. We have always been idiocracy. It has been idiocracy the whole damn time. That's what it's been. We just now have cameras and social media to put this shit on full display. This is what life looked like when your great 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 grandmama was out here too. There was just no TikTok to see her foolishness. I'm just saying it's been idiocracy the whole time. We are slowly but surely getting better. But it's just the more we begin to see, the more concerning it becomes. And so if you actually begin to interrogate the world around you, it gets really scary real quick about how little people know while knowing so much. Now, this was something that actually concerned me just when I was in middle school and high school. And this is something like me and my friends, we used to talk about. I'm like, bruh, how you know all of these sports stats? You got them memorized. And I mean, you know them good. And you don't just know them. You know what I'm saying? You can point to the history of them, remember the games, and yet you are flunking in school. Where is the disconnect? You're demonstrating that you have the capacity, but in most cases, it was living under this myth that learning is just supposed to feel like natural. You're supposed to feel natural. You either good at it or you not. And it's like, no, learning just feels more natural when it's about things that you're already interested in. But the beautiful thing about being a human is that you can program your interest. Oh, y'all ain't ready for that conversation. Okay, let's go. Let's go. All right. So that's emerging confidence where you know enough to feel certain, but not enough to feel humble. It's like it's that moment where you've read a few books and now you feel like you know just a little bit less than the people who've been working in the field for like 50 years. You're like, I can kind of hang with them after reading a few books. Like, no, you would have some type of confidence there, but just not enough to recognize the flaws in what you're presenting, you know? All right. And then there's what I like to call the difference between knowing and understanding. And this is reflective confidence. This person has enough information to know that complexity exists. And complexity, to me, like complexity is always like the bane of certainty. Like I can, if I wanted to just be that guy, I could likely destroy most people's certainty about anything just because complexity. Just complexity. How, Darante? Complexity. There's always another variable you didn't consider. There's always another way, another thing you didn't look at, you know? Just complexity. Um, this person has enough information to know complexity exists, and they're more open because they're no longer threatened by nuance. So in areas that we have reflective confidence at, and I like this because I think when you get to reflective confidence, it's no longer about your identity. Your identity is not the information anymore. And see, like, ooh, and that's why emergent confidence is so things that we have emergent confidence. That's why it's so we get so defensive with those because that's where our ego lives. No, this is attached to ego. This is attached to my identity. I did this. I'm a big boy. You know, I put my big boy pants on. It's there. It's like, yeah, I did this. By the time you get to the place of reflective confidence, where you know enough to understand complexity, where you know enough about the information to be humble, it kind of humbles you. Be humble. Sit down. It's no longer connected to your identity. The information exists in its own sphere as a part of information that you want to be accurate. Your identity is now not the information. Your identity is being the observer. Your identity is the observation, you know? Oh man. All right. And then of course, mastery, which is earned confidence. And that earned confidence is this you have a large network of processed information. In this sense, a person like this is they will be open to correction, but resistant to bandwagon pressure. Like they're not going to change their mind just because a lot of people changing their minds. Not if you have earned confidence. That they're not going to change their minds just because it's a popular thing to do. They're not going to change their minds just because it's the political thing to do. They're not going to change their minds just because other people really, 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 really think it's a good idea. No, they've earned their confidence, and so they change their minds with new information, not sensationalism. No, there are certain things. There's certain. I don't claim mastery in a lot of areas. But there are certain things that, like, nah, I know what I'm talking about when I talk about here. So if you're gonna come to me, hey, you got to give me some new information. You know, some new information. All right, so I want to add in as a side note before we hit our safety spectrum, and then we'll get out of here. Is uh, street epistemology. Okay, I love the idea of street epistemology. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't know much about it. And when I say didn't know, they're like as a believer, I obviously wasn't looking for stuff like that. But after seeing a few of the videos, I'm like, I probably would have engaged in more conversations like that. Um, and I'll tell you why. And then one of the people on our core team, who I'm also going to be having on the channel in a few weeks from now, like he loves epistemological conversations and has them often with his students. He's an instructor at Mississippi State University, and so street epistemology. If you're looking for a way to, because I don't think you can change somebody's mind, but I think you can help them change their own mind. Okay. You can make it safe for them to do so without them feeling like they're weak, without them feeling like, oh, I'm stupid. Okay. So street epistemology is useful because it doesn't begin with, here's why you're wrong. No, street epistemology doesn't begin this is why you're stupid. No. Street epistemology begins with curiosity. So it asks questions like, what do you believe? How confident are you? What led you to that confidence? What method did you use to reach that conclusion? Would that same method reliably lead someone else to truth? And what would lower or raise your confidence? I love those types of questions None of those questions are an attack. None of those questions are forcing the person to necessarily unravel their identity, yet it's getting them close though, you know? So what do you believe? How confident are you about in that belief? Okay. What led you to that confidence? And what method did you use to reach that conclusion? And would that same method reliably lead someone else to truth? And what would lower or raise your confidence? So instead of attacking the belief, you explore the method of belief formation. See, so street epistemology is not about changing someone's mind in the moment. It's about helping them hear themselves think. And that's such powerful insight. Like if you really want to help people change their minds, it's not your voice they need to hear, it's theirs. They don't need to hear you say it. They don't need to have a conversation with you. You have to find a way to help them have a conversation with themselves. You know? Come on now. So now let's talk about the safety spectrum. People change their minds. And this is what I think. People change their minds on a spectrum of safety. But by safety, I don't just mean whether the conversation feels nice, respectful, or non-threatening. I mean whether the idea itself feels safe enough to approach. Some ideas, especially when you're a believer, like I want you to think about it for a moment. For those of you who used to be believers, I know all of you may not have been believers, but for those of you who used to be believers in whatever faith background you come from, what were ideas that you now hold that back then you would have deemed as unsafe? You know, for me, believing that there was no God to me was an idea that was unsafe. It was like, no, if you believe that, you're going to become hateful, you're going to become greedy, you're going to become vengeful. And it was like, wow, that's a really bad way to look at yourself, you know. But like, no, that was an idea that was unsafe. So in many cases, it was a conversation that, watch this, it wasn't just a conversation that I wouldn't have entertained. It was an idea that I wouldn't have entertained. It was a thought that I wouldn't have entertained. You know, because that whole idea was unsafe. No, that's mm-mm. I don't know who I'll be on the other side of that. That don't feel good. I'm scared. You just don't know how bad I am. No, you just don't know. I'm a sinner. I'm a low. Maybe I'm a dog. I'm a mutt. You know, like you just don't know. You just don't. You know, and so it's like that. The idea of Darante becoming an atheist felt unsafe. So it was a thought that I would not have entertained, which therefore decreased the likelihood that I'd ever even be in a situation where I'd have to entertain the conversation. You know, like it wasn't happening because the idea itself wasn't safe. The idea of premarital sex outside of marriage, wasn't a safe idea for me. It carried all of this baggage about single mothers. That's the imagery and poverty, you know, and deadbeat dads, and then men in prison. Because I don't know what pregnancy has to do with prison, but you know, all of this imagery is there. I feel like there's some metaphor there. All of this imagery is there. And so then the idea of people engaging in premarital sex as a good thing for a long time in my life was an unsafe idea. And I think that's some of the pushback that you're experiencing, even with some people in the atheist movement who seem to be more, I guess, conservative than some people would have thought that they were going to be, which I often say, like, how do you think anything about anybody just knowing one thing about them? That's just jumping the loop. But some of that pushback that they're starting to see is that for some people, there are some ideas that still feel unsafe. And most of it, in my honest but limited opinion on this one, I think most of it is just a slippery slope fallacy. Right? It's not based on logic, but it's just that's how unsafe ideas often look in our minds. Because for most people, beliefs are not just opinions they carry. Beliefs are a part of the architecture of their identity. They help people explain the world. It helps them locate themselves in reality. It helps them maintain belonging, preserve meaning, and feel secure, which is why I've said and I've stressed the reason I stayed semi silent for 10 years, for a decade, is because I realized that just by immediately coming out, I'm taking away, I might be messing with people's security. And I wasn't nowhere near secure enough to be fucking with people's security. You know what I'm saying? So when we introduce a competing idea, we're not merely offering new information. We're often asking someone to reconsider something that has functioned as shelter. Can you imagine that? Can you fathom that? Can you sit in the nuance of that? That for you, it's as simple as is this factual or nah? That for you now, because you're on the other side, it's as simple as is this truth or nah? But for some people, it's like this has functioned as shelter. And before, I'm gonna take you there. And before you lift up yo high nose, say, well, nobody should be doing that. You can say nobody should or shouldn't be doing anything. We're talking about reality, because it's the same type of thing when someone stays in a relationship with someone that loves them but doesn't love them the right way. Man, I'm talking good. And it's like, well, why are you still staying here? Because this functions as shelter. Yeah. So that means that competing ideas has to become the competing idea has to become safer than the currently held idea. That's where the magic happens at, in my mind. The competing idea has to become safer than the currently held idea. Okay, so the unsafe idea for me for a long time was atheism. That's an no. If Darante is an atheism, he gonna be a dog. He's a mutt. No, Durante is just. But you've heard believers say this. You've heard believers say, "Oh man, if I don't have God, man, I'd be out here doing that." Yeah, I was like, nah. Being an atheist is unsafe. That's an unsafe idea. I'm not entertaining it. I'm not entertaining it. But at some point in my journey, the idea of being an atheist was becoming more safe than identifying as a Christian, than the idea of remaining a Christian. At some point, and that does not mean that atheism actually became a safer idea. It could just mean that Christianity became an unsafe identity. Oh my goodness. Oh man. Yes. Dang it. I have not been in this chat like I used to, y'all. I'm sorry. I got zoned in today. I got in the zone. Man, that absolutely tracks. Because I drifted away from belief after I got tired of trying to justify and excuse the behavior of clergy. Yes. That becomes that old idea becomes unsafe. And if you think about it, that's not necessarily a new phenomenon for us. You can likely go back through high school and think about going through different things. You could have friend groups that you were really close to at one point. These are my BFFs. These are my dudes for life, you know? And then at some point, something about the friend group is just like, ooh. And eventually that split happens. It's that same type of process, you know? So the competing idea has to become safer than the currently held idea, not merely more logical, not just more factual, not just intellectually impressive, but safer. Okay? Because people don't usually abandon a belief just because another idea is technically better. As a Christian, Buddhism sounded technically better, but getting out of hell was a safe bet. Like just trying to stay away from the hell part. You know what I'm saying? See, Buddhism sounded like technically better. You know what I'm saying? But I didn't know if it could protect me from hell. Habanero. Just trying to make it make sense. I'm just trying to make it make sense. So they abandon a belief when the old idea no longer feels safe enough to live in, and the new idea becomes safe enough to move towards. And again, that safe enough doesn't actually mean that the new thing has to be idealistic, romanticized, or unrealistic. And like I right now of sound mind, you would never see me jumping out of a window of a building, like never. Like that's foolishness, you know. And I'm not even just talking about like suicide stuff. I'm talking about you can just see me doing it for fun either. You know how some people are just like risk takers and they just like they gotta have that adrenaline rush. I'm good, bruh. Like I ain't gotta do none of that. No, Durante, you're gonna have a cord on. That's okay. I wasn't gonna do it with or without a cord. There's no world where I'm gonna be jumping out of any buildings, right? Just no world. Because why? That is unsafe. That's an unsafe idea for me. That is completely unsafe. Okay. And there's nothing about, for the most part, that makes that safer. Not for me. Well, we got a trampoline down here. No. Well, we got a soft landing pad. No. We're going to give you some wings and crab legs when you get off. Maybe. Hello. But no, there's nothing about it that makes it safe. Nothing about what's outside that window has to change to get me to change my mind. Something about the building has to change. Okay. So right now, I would never jump out of a building. I'm saying it. Sound mind. If anybody say he jumped, they're lying. All right. So let's just get that on record right now. Let's get that on record just in case. Okay. Today is May 20th. Dang it. The day after Malcolm King's Malcolm King. The day after Malcolm X's birthday. Indeed. I ain't jumping out no buildings. Okay. All right. In order to get me to jump out of a building, there's nothing you could do to make me jumping out of a building more attractive. What has to change to get me to want to jump out that building is not something about outside, it's something about the building. Okay. If the building is on fire, if there's mustard gas in the building or some type of toxin or poisonous stuff that can kill me, then the building is no longer safe. And so then jumping out of a building, something that I am absolutely terrified of doing, jumping out of a building becomes a safer bet. And in many cases at that moment with the adrenaline, I'm almost thinking at the right height, that's with or without the little safety blanket down there. It's like I don't want to burn alive. Like that's not something I want to do. So I'd likely just risk splat at that moment. I think splat would be quicker than I guess it depends on how high the heat is. This is getting a little morbid, isn't it? Let's come back. I'm sorry for taking y'all that deep. Yes, if Trump is in the building, like that's a good reason to jump out. Oh man. So a person. And the thing is, like, a person may stay in a burning building if they don't yet know the building is burning. So, from their perspective, the building is safe and the window is danger. But once experience or information convinces them that the building is on fire, the safety calculation changes. For some of us, that's feeling the heat of the cognitive dissonance of that cognitive repulsion. And that's letting us know this place isn't as safe as I thought it was. And for me, like, and I've talked about this in my early videos, is because I realized, like, oh, y'all are all kids. Now, I'm not saying all believers are kids. I'm saying all of the believers that I've known. And it's like calling them kids is offensive to kids. It's bad. Like, I don't think there's anything I can call them that would be accurate that wouldn't be politically incorrect or offensive, because that's how bad it is, you know. And I'm like, ooh, pseudo intelligence is this is scary. This is scary. That's what made the church world and Christianity unsafe for me, was realizing how many people were just making shit up as they went, just making it up as they went. And I began to realize that, oh my goodness, like, we are literally platforming stupidity and calling it genius. This is terrifying, and yet it answers so much. And so at that moment, I realized, like it has been rumored about Dr. King, that I was in a burning building. Whew, y'all wasn't ready for that. Like for my history buffs out there who get nuance and political poetry, those are just bars. Let's just call that what it was, right? Let me pop my collar without pulling my earpieces out. Those were bars, okay? Those were bars. But this is often how this is often how mind change works. The new idea doesn't win because it's new. It wins because the old idea loses its safety and the new idea becomes a more secure place to stand. The same is true when someone is teaching someone how to swim. How many of you got kids? And how many of you taught your kids how to swim? And how many of you had kids who were terrified when they first learned how to swim? It's not fun. But you know what? Teaching someone who is afraid of water how to swim is a great metaphor for trying to change somebody's mind. It's a great metaphor to try to change somebody's mind. So I got 4 kids, y'all. I got 4 kids, and I've taught them all how to swim, and it scared me. You know, they were scared and I was scared. Except for that one, the youngest son. Like, he just wasn't scared of nothing. I remember flipping him over in his float, and I'm like, oh, snap. And he just came back up laughing. I was like, ah, you special. Yes, indeed. All right. But if you think about teaching someone how to swim who's afraid to swim, it's an excellent metaphor for trying to change somebody's mind. You know, because a lot of times the way we approach it is really like just trying to throw them in the water, and they're terrified of the water. And you're wondering why they resent you when you do it. You're like, I'm trying to have this conversation with you to save your life. You trying to save my life by throwing me in the deep end? Help me understand, bro. That's why they resent you, because that's what it feels like for them. To a swimmer, water may feel freeing. To a non-swimmer, water may feel like death. You can't effectively teach someone to swim while ignoring the fact that their body experiences the water as unsafe. Okay? Sit with that for a moment. You can't effectively teach somebody how to swim if their body experiences the water as unsafe. What you're dealing with now is a reflex that is kicking in to save their lives. Okay? So I want you to think about that. If that's how mind change works, and just if I'm right, I may not be right, y'all. This is not lab tested. It's just observational. But if I'm right, and ideas exist in our minds on a spectrum of safety, of safe and not safe, and the idea that you want somebody to entertain is an idea that in that person's brain exists as unsafe, then that is equivalent as being put in a position, like put in an ocean and you don't know how to swim. That's the feeling they get when they think of that idea. And so then you trying to just put them in that conversation, their body is experiencing that conversation as unsafe. New information is like water to many people. To those already comfortable with it, it feels refreshing. Yes. But to those who do not know how to move in it, it feels like drowning. And it's like, if you love me, why would you be trying to drown me? And like, if any of you've ever taught your kids how to swim, you've probably had this moment before where they're looking at, why are you doing this to me? I don't gotta learn how to swim, okay? We live in Alabama, like nah. But that's what you because it's scary. It's it's like forcing somebody who's terrified of heights on a roller coaster. It's like, oh dang, this is hostage and this is harmful. This is harmful. We're actually creating trauma sometimes. I'm not saying all the times, but I think if we'd be honest, for those of us who've tried to change people's mind, if you've tried to change people's mind and you run up into that area where you realize, oh, this is very not cool for them, this is unsafe for them, but you kept going anyway, I'm pretty sure you realize afterwards, like, oh, this just created trauma. Probably for both of y'all at that moment. Because now you trying, I just don't know why they that stupid. Because you're not an expert on personalities. You're not an expert on human development. You're not an expert on people. Like, I think we do have to stop using our incredulity against people. You see how I threw it in there? No. Well, I just can't believe. There's a lot of things you just can't believe. Get over it. To quote Neil deGrasse Tyson, the universe is under no obligation to make any sense to you. You're only going to understand the things that you're actually trying to understand. You know? And you got to be honest with yourself, like, oh, I don't understand it because I don't actually want to understand it. I'm just annoyed by it. No, be honest enough to say that. Be honest enough to say that. You know? Okay. So the work is not simply to throw people into deeper information. The work is to help them develop enough trust, skill, exposure, and confidence to realize that they can survive in the water. All right. So let's walk through some levels on this. Unsafe, like this idea threatens me. That's how atheism existed in my world for a long time. That's how a lot of conservative ideas got protected in my world for a long time. This is the stage where competing ideas, they feel dangerous. The person may not only feel socially threatened by the conversation, they may feel existentially threatened by the implications of the idea itself, as it was with me and atheism. In this stage, the current belief still feels like the safest building available. Even if there is smoke in the hallway, the window still looks far more dangerous than the room. And this is why people defend beliefs that are harming them, because from the inside, the belief may still feel safer than the unknown alternative, right? This is also why people side with power, because not siding with power is unsafe. Is this too much, y'all? You ever wonder when you look at a situation, he's like, why would the people just be siding with why would they be just keep siding with the people who are causing abuse? Why would they be siding with the people who just keep slandering people? Why would they just keep siding with the people who won't let the victim speak? Why would they just keep siding with the people who keep trying to silence other people? I'm talking about the president. Maybe. I'm talking about power. I'm like, well, why would people do this? Because the alternative is unsafe. And those are things that I look for. I look at how people weaponize loyalty. I look for how people weaponize language. I look for the old, what do you call it? The carrot and the stick type of stuff. I look for it. Oh man. Okay. All right. So um dang, that explains so much. Okay. So a Christian may not only be defending Christianity because they think it's true. A person may not only be defending an idea because they think it's true. A person may not only be running with a story because they think it's true. They may be defending it because unbelief feels like moral chaos, family rejection, eternal danger, social isolation, or the collapse of meaning. Which is, if I don't stick with the official story, if I don't go with the official doctrine, if I don't stay on the right side of the fence, then the other side of that is chaos for me, especially in a context where people are letting you know that that's exactly what it's going to be. It's going to be chaos. You're going to be rejected. You're going to be isolated. Your life will have no more meaning. This is the language that often gets used to categorize other ideas as unsafe. Okay. I believe, okay, let's go. Disrupted safety. Disrupted safety is the old idea no longer feels completely secure. Okay, so this is where the fire alarm starts going off. The person may still live inside the old belief, but they're beginning to notice smoke and they're beginning to notice that, hey, something no longer fits. And so maybe the doctrine doesn't match their moral intuition. Maybe the community's behavior contradicts its claims. After a while, I had to admit that I had been a part of enough churches and enough church organizations. I had worked with enough pastors. I had worked in enough ministries to realize that, oh, this doesn't work anywhere. So at one point, it's just like, well, you just didn't believe the right way. You just didn't go to the right church. You didn't. No, this doesn't work anywhere. Nowhere that this is supposed to work are people behaving any differently than they behave. So this is not some type of special place. That's what I began to realize, that my safety was being disrupted. The illusion was breaking. This is not a safe place. We're saying the Holy Spirit can keep you, but he ain't keeping nobody. And then by this time, I'm looking behind the curtains enough to understand how the mechanics work, and I'm like, whoa, there's some real mechanics that are working here, and it's not the mechanics that are being messaged, type of thing. So this no longer became a safe place, or maybe the Bible begins to look more human than divine. It's like, and then you said, is somebody manipulating me? You get that. Some people get that feeling. You go through the point of which, like, wait a minute, especially as a black man in the South, you know, I could see why white people would want me to believe this was true. You go through that. Maybe their lived experience has outgrown the explanation they inherited. Well, after meeting a few gay people, they just like people. They know different than other people. And that's the stage of cognitive dissonance. The old belief still feels familiar, but no longer feels fully safe. And so this stage matters because people don't usually move toward a competing idea until the current idea becomes unstable. The building has to become questionable before the window becomes considerable. And I will say that's one of the things that I am proud of people for now is we're getting really good at making sure that the window is starting to look attractive. And that's just being honest about the building being on fire. I don't know who started the fire, but the building is definitely on fire. There's smoke, right? There's comparatively safe. The new idea is becoming less dangerous. This is where the competing idea becomes approachable. It may not feel true yet, it may not feel comfortable yet, but it no longer feels immediately unsafe. Okay. This is like booty eating, going right back to booty eating. Okay. Like that's an idea for me. I feel comparatively safe with this idea. This idea is less dangerous for me. It doesn't feel like something that people really do. Like I'm like, y'all just playing, right? And it doesn't feel comfortable for me yet. But it's not something where I'm just like, ew, yucky. No, no, it's comparatively safe. Like do what you do. There's some other jokes there, but I'm gonna leave that one alone because you got to kind of go down the childish hole to make the jokes that I wanted to make there, and I don't mind doing that because I grew up on Bebe's Kids, so y'all ain't ready. All right, so but comparatively safe, like this is the swimming lesson stage. The person is not ready to dive into the deep end, but they may be willing to put their feet in the water you know and so this stage requires patience, and just let me just give that word like patience for a moment, right? That's a word that we all need to be reminded of. This is why I don't necessarily get mad when anybody tells me anything about anybody. Watch this. All right. um Anybody can tell me anything about anybody. I don't necessarily, almost anything, I think. I don't necessarily respond with any type of vi- oh, I can't find the word I'm looking for. Vitriol. Like I don't respond like, oh, I can't believe this. What? No, because I kind of have patience. And that patience just comes from seeing a lot of ugliness in life, but it also comes from I no longer believe that there's a perfect world with a heavenly father orchestrating things on people's behalf, and nor do I just believe that people are inherently just helpful and wonderful human beings. And so kind of like the word of the day has been like things exist on a spectrum. I think all humans are on the spectrum. That felt like such a good joke. I think everybody out here is on the spectrum. But no, I think humans are on a spectrum of growth. Everybody's at different stages. And so I don't respond with that type of shock because I have no I have no logical reason to believe that anybody else's lived experience would bring them to all of my conclusions. I'm hoping they get there, at least some of the important ones. Like all of the ones on human rights, it would be nice if people can get there fast. It would be so nice. But unfortunately, for me thinking that it should just already be there, to me, that would be a symptom of magical thinking. I got no logical reason to think that it's going to happen that way, not with everything that I understand about societal development, not with everything I understand about evolutionary sociology. Just it's just not how it works. We're all on our own types of different journeys. And this is why, again, I say I don't exist to change anybody's mind. That's not even something I'm interested in doing. If someone sits at a park and puts the sign up and says, "Come change my mind," I'm walking right past that bench. I said bench. You know, like I'm not interested in that conversation. I'm not interested in changing anybody's mind because, from my humble perspective, that's not even really how mind change works. If your mind changes during the conversation, it's because you changed your mind. I ain't got that type of magic. This isn't no abracadabra. I say the right words and then you say, "Oh, my mind has been changed. I've been delivered." You know, that's not how that works. So no. Um, so if you move too fast, if you move too fast, the new idea becomes threatening again. If you mock the old belief too aggressively, the person may retreat back into it because familiar danger often feels safer than unfamiliar freedom. So the key, at least, in my little humble hypothesis, in my little humble hypothesis, the key is to make the new idea livable, not just arguable. Livable. Okay. Can can I live in this new idea? Can I live? That's a song too. That's a song too. All right. And then for transfer of safety, and this is the actual mid-change zone, okay? The person doesn't simply reject the old idea, they transfer their sense of security. The old belief becomes the burning building, the new idea becomes the window, the ladder, the open air, the water, and the water they know how to move through, okay? So, like, for me, as far as, like, religion and I won't even say religion, superstition. Superstition and anything it's attached to me, that's the burning building. And I like because I like to look for the roots of things. And so when I hear superstitious thinking, I'm just like, ah, no, I'm not really into that. Because for me, just like atheism used to be on the spectrum of unsafe, now superstitious thinking, that's just really unsafe for me. It's really unsafe for me. It sounds like it sounds like Jack and the Beanstalk type of stuff. Mhm. Sound like snake oil, you know? So I don't so those are the things that I kinda stay away from now because it seems unsafe for me. Um, so this is where mind change becomes identity change, and that's why it can't be rushed. And I think that's the thing that we missed. You're not just asking someone to change their mind, you are asking them to change their identity in many cases. You know, like if you're asking somebody to change their mind about where they want to eat at, that's a different thing. But when you're asking someone to change or when you're wanting for someone to change their minds about beliefs that they hold personally, sincerely, and dearly, you are not then just asking them to change their mind. You are not just asking them to be considerate. You are asking them to change their identity. And I'm not saying that's an unfair ask. I'm saying it's a big ask. It might be such a big ask that it needs to be only asked by qualified professionals. Hmm. Okay. When s- when someone changes their mind about a belief that held their worldview together, they may also have to change their relationships, their language, their habits, their community, their morality, and even their imagination of the future. They are not just changing answers, they are changing shelter, you know? And then finally, there's reconstructive safety that says, I can live here now. This is where the person no longer feels safe, not only feels safe. This is where the person no longer only feels safe questioning the old belief. They feel safe building beyond it. So it's not just that, whew, I'm safe. I got out of that building. And let me just spend the rest of my life talking about how bad that building is. You know, that transfer of safety, maybe we spend some time there. But when you get into reconstructive safety, it's now more about building things that are safe for me now. Okay. I got to build beyond that now. And this is huge for deconstruction because many people are not only afraid of being wrong, they are afraid of being homeless, intellectually homeless, socially homeless, morally homeless. For some, not maybe not for you, but for some, spiritually homeless. Where do I even go to even ask spiritual questions? Some people aren't ready to just let go overnight. And so they go from having all of these creative and kooky conversations with people to now just nothing. So Bridge City's role, and you know I'm gonna talk about Bridge City. Bridge City's role is not merely to tell people that the building is on fire. Bridge City's role is to help people find, build, and become part of safer structures. Okay. No, you're gonna jump out of the building when you're ready. When you're ready, you're gonna jump. There's a lot of us out here coaching, cheering you on, but then after that, you're gonna need somewhere to go. And so that means community matters, visibility matters, practices matters, language matters, belonging, joy, service, shared rituals matters. All of that is the work of reconstruction. Because if the only thing we offer people is critique, we may convince them the building is unsafe without helping them believe they can survive outside of it. And just to give you a picture of what that might look like for them, they're standing on the ledge of the building. You have effectively convinced them that the building is on fire. They've heard your critique and they're like, you are right. The building is on fire. And you down there 20 stories beyond them. And they're like, what do I do now? And you're like, you gotta jump. And yet you've done nothing to put anything down there to catch them when they fall. So, like, while me, I would likely risk the splat. I choose the splat over the melting type of thing. Um, you know, some people, like, they're not going to get over that fear. And again, that brings us right back to the safety. We have to be concerned with the safety of people. Imagine that, right? If the only thing we're offering is critique without helping people survive outside of the burning building, then that is not liberation. It's abandonment. So the work is deeper than changing minds. The work is cultivating environments where better ideas become safer to consider, safer to test, safer to inhabit, and safer to build a life around. That's how we make a difference. Or let me put it this way, that's how we make mass difference. There's a great way to be in a room of 300 people and impact maybe 5 people by the end of the conversation. I don't find that to be as effective. So what we need is something that allows people to change their minds at mass rates. Not just about one thing, but about everything. Because it's not just one question that we need help solving right now. It's not just one problematic area. I was having a conversation in the comments of a comment section of my YouTube videos, which I don't do a lot, but I do have some people who've been with me like since day one. And so when they comment, I do try to have conversation with them. And it was me. I don't want to say the person's name, but we were talking back and forth just a little bit about how the person says, well, spirituality has just done so much to mislead people and to scam people out of their monies, and nothing else has. And I was like, oh, nothing else? And he specifically said, like Gumbo has never done that. And so I responded, I was like, I dare you to Google the Gumbo scam. And then of course he was amazed, like, oh snap. The Gumbo has been used to scam people before. And I'm like, yeah. Because I mean, anybody who's thinking that religion and spirituality is just the one thing that's ruining humanity really doesn't have a really good view of the situation. It's never been just religion and spirituality where scams live. Many financial scams have nothing to do with religion, have nothing to do with spirituality. Many health and wellness scams have nothing to do with religion, have nothing to do with spirituality. Snake oil, from where we get the phrase snake oil salesman, it has nothing to do with religion. No, scams are an us problem. It's not a topical issue. It's not something that's, yeah, if we just stop being religious, we'd stop being so scammy. Okay. Well, if we just stop using words like, man, if you want to identify all the words that have ever been used to scam people, you're going to have a long way to go, starting with insurance. Ba-doom. Y'all didn't see that one coming, did you? I'm too pretty. All right. Oh, man. So that's why I say I'm not here to change anybody's mind. I'm more interested in creating spaces that makes it easier for people to change their own minds. I think that's where the work needs to be invested. I also think that's one of the reasons. Also think that's one of the reasons why a decent percentage of people can either become atheist or confirm their atheism or become non-believers or become humanist or confirm their humanism during their college years, because that is an environment that makes it safer in most cases to change your mind. You know? Like, I kissed a girl and I like that. Makes it safer to change your mind. All right, I didn't mean to put that twist on it, but I thought it was funny and I couldn't resist, and that's how my Nero Spicy rolls. Thank y'all for hanging out with me today. I think, look, I did this right at 2 hours. I didn't think we'd get through 2 hours, but I appreciate you for showing up today. I hope I've said something that's given you something to chew on, something to learn, something to grow with, something to build on. Again, my goal is never for you to take anything that I say to be as paramount or as to be as conclusive for your life. My goal is to share my experiences and my thoughts and my ideas as a way to spark new conversation in you, new ideas in you, and ultimately new opportunities and communities for the world that we share. And so again, thank you for being here with me today. I appreciate you. Until next time, keep rising, and I'm out of here.
Jalapeno habanero, hell yeah. Jalapeno habanero, hell yeah. Jalapeno habanero, hell yeah. Jalapeno habanero, hell yeah. We can make it over anything when we focus on our liberty. It doesn't matter where we used to be. We're waking up and now we're breaking free. Jalapeno habanero, hell yeah. Jalapeno habanero, hell yeah. Jalapeno habanero, hell yeah. Jalapeno habanero, hell yeah. We can make it over anything when we focus on our liberty. It doesn't matter where we used to be. We're waking up and now we're breaking free. Jalapeno habanero, hell yeah. Jalapeno habanero, hell yeah. Jalapeno habanero, hell yeah. Jalapeno habanero, hell yeah. We are rising into victory, celebrating our humanity. It doesn't matter where we used to be. We're waking up and now we're breaking free. Jalapeno habanero, hell yeah. Hey, hey. Jalapeno habanero, hell yeah. Jalapeno habanero, hell yeah. Jalapeno habanero, hell yeah. Yeah. We are rising into victory, celebrating our humanity. It doesn't matter where we used to be. We're waking up and now we're breaking free, yeah. and now we're breaking.